Hello, everyone. I want to welcome all of you to this lecture. The topic for the session today is best practices in quantitative research, and I'm here to share some tips and tricks based on my experience on uh, publishing in top journals for the last 10 years in accounting and finance related areas. My name is Rashidul Hassan, and I am an assistant professor in accounting, currently at Coventry University in UK. And before I start, I want to thank Professor Ashfaq for inviting me for this session. And due to some prior engagement, I am not being able to do it in person. So I'm recording this lecture, and I hope that you will find this discussion useful in shaping your dissertation or in future if you are planning to publish any studies or your dissertation in a reputable journal. I'll try to shape my discussion in that way. Now let me start by discussing about some of the topics and trends that are now very common in the realm of finance. I'll try to focus more on finance, and maybe the discussion will be useful if you are also focusing on doing your dissertation or your research in economics. So before we decide, okay, what we want to study or publish or want to write on, it is important that we focus on identifying what is the current trend, because uh, just like everything, the issues, the topics changes in terms of the research interest. So that's why it is always necessary to be updated, what is more relevant, more contemporary. If we look at the slide, it highlights a study by Brooks and Skopel in um, probably it was published in 2018. But the evidence they provide was what are the trends in topics more relevant in finance. And let me just go back to my screen. So this is the study I'm referring to, and all the links for these studies are available for you to view in the slides. I hope the Professor Ashfaq can share if anybody is interested, or you can just simply Google search and you will get these papers. Hopefully, you have the access to read. So this is the study we are looking for, and what I will do, I will go to the end where the authors have provided some of the findings. So these figures are actually a word search uh, generated from the publication in top journals in finance, accounting, and economics, mostly finance, I believe, from 1996 to 2015. And you can see uh, the word cloud actually gives us an idea that in finance, the most important areas of research has been on corporate governance, risk, stock pricing, option pricing, merger and acquisition, stock volatility, liquidity, stock trading, ownership. All these things have been the buzzwords, and I believe it still is. And there may be some extension, maybe some sub classification or area, but overall, if you are still thinking about doing a research and you are trying or struggling to see which area want to focus, this might be a guide for you to see what is trending in finance. These are the most commonly used keywords. So corporations are always the main focus, and then depending on your interest, you can either look at corporate governance, corporate risk, corporate policy in terms of financing, liquidity in terms of the financial industry, the credit classification, ownership structure. Crisis can also be an important issue. The 2008 crisis has actually dominated a lot of finance research, and recently the COVID crisis has also been an interesting area to explore how the companies have been mitigating this type of crisis, what type of policy they make, how do they, uh, for example, if you look at there is the top right corner, the keyword is debt. So how debt has been managed, whether a firm who has used high level of debt in their corporate capital structure, uh, did they do well in the COVID-19 crisis, or did they suffer? So this has been some interesting areas of research that we have seen generating in the last 5, 6 years, about risk, about governance, about liquidity, and so many other things. Then I want to focus on this table about some classification of finance articles by journal ratings, subject, and methodology as it provides. Even though the data is between 1996 to 2015, but this has very important information. One of the thing is about this. These are the classification that we used in UK to classify the ranking of the journals. It starts from 1 star, 2, 3, 4, 4 star. So the 4 star are the most high profile journals that everybody crave, but it's extremely difficult to get into. So for anybody who is early career researcher, it is important that you start from the very first step. So it's like uh, going through this ladder system. So you may have to start from 1 star, then two, then three, then four. So it's the more you go, the higher the ranking, the higher the difficulty. And as you can see, depending on the type of journal, the topic of research actually it changes. As you can see, the journal JOD is the Journal of Distinction. These are the best of the best journals, and majority of them they focus more on asset pricing. So this is a very core finance issue, and these journals they prefer this type of papers or studies that focus on asset pricing. If you are not into asset pricing, maybe you can focus on something that is to do with a very core corporate finance. It can be stock volatility, it can be investment efficiency, portfolio management, all these things. If you want to see a bit more about the governance pattern, then these journals actually are increasing the number of studies they accept. uh, then there are some dedicated studies on banking, then insurance, but you will see that not many journals are actually taking papers from insurance issues. It's not that they don't want, they don't get. So that's one thing. Not many people are aware what is an insurance, what does it do, what issues affects an insurance firm. So perhaps you may look into certain areas and see if you are interested to explore not banking but insurance for your next research or your dissertation. Microstructures are sometimes related with micro institutions, microfinance, all these things, and then you may have interest in investment and portfolio management. So these are some of the key areas of research that has been going on or have become very popular in finance. And the next thing what we can look at is in the panel B, the percentage of work classified by methodological approach. And this is something we will focus more today because the discussion today is going to be more about what method is more appropriate for you and how do you decide. Now, looking at this table, if you can see that there are several different ways or methods that has been applied. But one thing is for sure is you can see empirical or quantitative method is very prominent in finance and economics research. It's not that people don't use other methods, but you can see it is majority of the papers are empirical in nature. That means they are more quantitative. Why? We will look into it more. However, the reason is the method that you choose, it's something to be linked with the problem that you want to explore. So, because the nature of the problem we explore in finance and economics research are something to do with performance, volatility, trends. So that's why the type of method you need to apply answer to get answer to these problems are mostly empirical. That is what we will talk a bit going forward. But just to give you an idea, this has been the trend in finance and economics research is that the studies are majority of them are using an empirical or quantitative method. Now let's go back to our discussion, and these are some updated areas that I tried to export from some of the recent papers, and you can see these are the additional group of keywords that has emerged in the recent years, and they include behavioral finance. That means looking at individual and their willingness to actually accept certain type of financial activities or services, the investment behavior. Then we have a plethora of studies going on in fintech. I believe these days everybody wants to get more information about fintech, about digital finance. Sustainable finance has been an issue that people are very interested to see and explore. Uh, However, some of the traditional issues have remained. For example, financial risk management, financial econometrics. As you have seen previously, I highlighted asset pricing is a very, very important and well accepted topic in finance. So, if you have studied asset pricing and you want to expand your knowledge and horizon on this through your research and dissertation, I would ask you to go ahead, and if you can do a good job, you will be able to actually get it published from through a good reputed journal. And portfolio management, these are some of the areas you can look into. However, I'm not saying that these are the only, but these are some of the key areas that you might think about finding new ideas and exploring these ideas into a new research or dissertation that you are thinking about at this point. So just giving you some information. Now, moving on, if we now just focus a few minutes on thinking about why would you go for a quantitative research design? And I'm going to go through all because it's better to have a look at why we choose a specific research method because there sometimes becomes a lot of confusion that whether you should go for a qualitative, quantitative, or mixed. There are three different types. So when we talk about quantitative, and the author here, they already mentioned that if you want to categorize the research problem, and I talked about that, research problem is the center of any research, and it dictates the type of method that you would like to apply or adopt in your study. So if we look at the research problem, there are actually four types. There can be descriptive, comparative, relationship bound, and historical. So depending on the type of research problem that you identified will dictate what the type of method that you need to apply to get results that supports your hypothesis or supports your findings. So if you look at descriptive, questions, they analyze variables. You need to discuss the problem by isolating certain variables and then uh, draw certain patterns, conclusion out of them. The comparative type of research question are actually more explanatory because it compares different things. In terms of relationship, you are trying to design a research question which is trying to find, okay, whether this A has a relationship on B or C. How is this relationship? Is it a positive impact, negative association? How is A making an impact on B? And then finally, you have uh, a type of research question which is historical in nature. That means you are trying to predict the future outcome using the past. So it depends what type of research question you identified. For example, if you are more into focusing on how governance is going to have an impact on performance. So it is more a relationship bound, and that's why it will require you to identify a type of quantitative method that is best suited to give you answer that supports the conclusion against the problem you identify. So when you are applying quantitative research problems, you are primarily based on a deductive approach. So what you are trying to do, and you should avoid question that only talks about does, is, because we want to have question which is more critical, more elaborative. It should not be a yes or no type of question. So that's why you have to see to what extent, how, what, this type of things is what we are trying to explore. Then if you are going for a qualitative inquiry, that means in this case you are not trying to look for past to predict the future. You are not trying to look at giving an explanation of how A affects B. It is more evolving and it is more open-ended. That means you might want to see how something works. What is the nature of banking in a specific country? So it's not that you are only looking at how the country's economics or economic situation is affecting the banking performance, but you are trying to elaborate what is going on in the banking sector for example, in Oman. So you are just looking at a single country, looking at the banking industry, and to give an overview of what has happened and what are the key demographic, what has been the key highlights throughout the last 20, 30 years or since the beginning of the independence or something. You are just giving an evolving nature of your observation and it's more open-ended. So a quantitative inquiry is not relevant in this case because you are not trying to give any description of statistics. You are not trying to make any prediction. You are not trying to show relationship. That's why quantitative method will not work because of the nature of the research problem is completely different in this case. It is more of a journey. It's an inquiry that you're trying to make. And then you have a mixture. I will not go too detail into this. However, this is also very has become quite common that uh, some researchers find that there are questions that requires a mixture of both quantitative and qualitative. When you do mix these both, this is a mixed method approach. And if you are interested, it will require a little bit more exploration. We don't have that much time here to deal with this right now, but remember that if you are working on a project, a research, which cannot just simply answer the research problem based on the quantitative or qualitative. That is when you have to bring both method into the picture. But The mixing is very difficult. Sometimes you need to have some theoretical justification that which comes first. Sometimes, like a chicken or egg, it's like whether you will do the qualitative first or quantitative then qualitative. It's not something very easy to decide, and it depends on so many factors. So maybe in future, if we have another session, we will discuss, or if you are interested, you can just drop me an email, and I'm happy to have a chat with you and discuss whether mixed method is appropriate for you or not. Now, if we have a look at this study, and it talks about a systematic review of literature about finance and sustainability, what I want to focus, what the study has decide or has presented are some very interesting figures. Now, the first one we see here are in terms of the context. As you can see, they have four categories: A, B, C, and then there is a category called A and B. So each category, like A is about developing countries, B is about A is developed countries, B is developing, C non-applicable. That means they don't focus on a specific type of country, maybe. And then we have a mixture of developed and developing. That means more a global perspective. So as you can see that not applicable, if we ignore that part, maybe they were not able to classify. However, developed part A is 38.94%, which is the majority. And that has been the case. And that is one of the research gap we are trying to fulfill, because majority of the studies in finance and economics are always going back to either North American countries or European contexts. Mostly they're focusing on develop, because one thing you understand that we are talking about quantitative, you need data, you need information, and the firms from developed countries, they provide the information, their information are more accessible. So that is one of the primary reason why we have a lot of studies that focuses on developed countries. The number of studies on developing countries are increasing, but it's not nearly there. Something to ponder when you are thinking about your next study, or your research topic or dissertation. Then we look at in this figure about the most frequently used methods. So I just want to re-emphasize that quantitative is still the king in finance and accounting research, in economics. However, if you look at E, in this study in the area of finance and sustainable finance research, the authors actually, based on the studies they have examined, they hardly found any that used survey. So it's not that we cannot, but it's we do not get too many survey based studies, because uh, if you are looking at a specific issue, depending on the problem, you may not find survey as an applicable tool. There has been a lot of studies which are focusing on a case study basis, that is number F. And then you can see there is a mixture of qualitative, quantitative, conceptual with quantitative that's going on. B and F, like qualitative and survey case study is also popular. So end of the day, depending on what type of method you want to apply, again and again, I'm trying to emphasize, it all depends on the research problem you are trying to explore. I wanted to share this slide just so that I have received a lot of times students ask me that how many years of data do I need? If you are doing a quantitative study, and if the study is focused on secondary data, we'll have a discussion on what does it mean. Secondary data is something you can get ready-made through a database or from company websites or their annual reports. And you can see category D, ignoring category E, which is non-applicable, more than 10 years is a norm actually. If more than 10 years, if it is not possible, between 5 to 10 years is something you will see quite often. If you can justify that your data between 3 to 5 years is uh, reflecting and giving the most updated information about the scenario you are exploring, perhaps that will go. But I would always say that if you have access to a database and you are getting information from a database, and you can get the data for 10 years, that's quite good. However, you need to justify, okay, what time period you are exploring, why it is necessary for you to explore that number of years. It's always good if you have a justification. It's not that you can just download 20 years without any justification. It doesn't work like that. Something might have happened that triggers you to go for the study. For example, there has been some studies which only looks at 3 years. That's before 2008, after 2008. So what they wanted to see maybe monthly data for 3 years just before and after the 2008 crisis. So 3 years justifiable. However, not every study is going to that detail. If you are looking at annual based data, sometimes you may need to have a little bit more, uh, considering also the number of firms that you are focusing on. So hopefully I can give you some example later, but just to highlight that possibly it will be safer if you can focus on a 5 to 10 years data cycle, just to be safe and get a better results, more reliable results, and consistent findings. So here are my important tips that if you want to take it in that way, no matter if you are developing a dissertation or you are writing your research, these are the most common sections that you will have to include. And I just wanted to give you some key tips that when you are writing the introduction, a lot of time what students are doing is that they are filling the introduction with a lot of generic statements, some unnecessary statistics, some definition, things that you don't need at the beginning of your introduction or in your introduction at all. Because at introduction, what you are actually trying to do is introduce the problem. What is the main problem and why you are actually interested to study this problem? And you have to provide some evidence that whether anybody else have done it before, if somebody have done it, what they have done, and then why do you need to again revisit this area. Because if this is not already discussed clearly in the introduction, then you are leaving a room for a lot of questions in if you are sending your dissertation for examination, or you are sending your paper for uh, journal publication. So I have been serving as an associate editor for several journals, and I can tell you that the moment you send your journal uh, article to any journal, and when we are looking at the paper before we send it to review, you will be looking into the introduction to see how well have you discussed the research problem, and does it has any relevance in today's time. Are you talking about a problem that needs solution or exploration now, or has it already lost its relevance? Because we already have received a lot of very important and influential findings. So be careful that think clearly, why are you doing this study? What is the main problem? And then, has anybody conducted a similar study? Be careful that you do a thorough search. You can do it through Google Scholar, which is free, to make sure that the thing that you are trying to do, nobody has already done it. If somebody has done something that you are planning, then it's better to abort the ship, try to find a different idea, because it's like it's better not to replicate. Just try to find a new idea that is more current, contemporary, and proceed accordingly. And then when you go to the next section, when you are in the literature review, uh, don't just give a lot of definition and all these things. Try to see if you can critically explain that. Okay, what do we mean by critically explain? That means we try to see, okay, what paper number one has done, how paper number two is different to a one, and then how what type of gaps are still available. So if you cannot identify these gaps, then you will not be able to convince your examiner or reviewer that you have something significant. If you're just repeating, maybe it's fine at a like in your first go. If you just, this is a practice, you're trying to see if you can do it, but with replication of other studies, you cannot go that far. So keep that in mind. Then in the next phase, when you are in the method section, whether you want to use primary or secondary data, that will depend on the type of problem you are exploring. For example, if you are focusing on the online banking behavior for a specific group of people in India, you may not get the secondary data available for this for you in a database. So you might need to use a primary source, which is sometimes using a survey. So that is the reason why I put that the the data that you want to use, whether primary or secondary, even if you want to use a secondary data and you know that other people have used a specific database, you may not be able to get access to that database. So even if you construct a very good study by looking at the relevant papers and everything, but if you don't have access to the database, you will not be able to complete the study. So what is the point? So it's important to know your limitation and design your study in that sense, so that you don't get stuck after you have conducted literature review, you have written your introduction, you have almost completed half of the study, and then you realize, okay, there is no way I'm going to get the data. So that's why we always suggest to the students that check whether you have access to the database, whatever database that you feel that is going to be the source of your data for the study. If you don't have it, then you need to rethink what will be the best way to approach this study. Then when it comes to the analysis part, I'm not focusing too much on these methods and everything in terms, because it's not a research method class. It's about just talking about the few tips and tricks that might help you in navigating and deciding what will be the best approach. And so when it comes to applying statistical tools in analyzing the results, because it's going to be your study and you should be comfortable on the type of tools that you want to apply. So if you do not know how to handle a specific type of tools, for example, uh, eViews is a very nice tool if you want to apply time series technology, time series methods. If you want to use panel data method, Stata is a good uh, thing. If you don't have access to any of the software, there are open source software like R, which can also handle any of the secondary data. But if you don't know any of these, sometimes then it is better to not dive into this type of research, because in the what will happen, you will try to learn it along the time you are doing your dissertation, and then sometimes when you are in hurry, you might end up making mistakes, which will cost you a lot. So it's better to play based on your strength. If you are very good with SPSS, which is focusing more on primary data, survey-based data, then go for it. So that means if try to find a research problem that is more niche, that require to go for a survey-based questionnaire and analyzing the data, then go for it. However, if you are good in learning these type of tools and you know that you will be able to learn it, you have access to it, I will certainly say that having a knowledge about dealing with secondary data and using it in your research can really help you going forward if you want to uh, attract the top level publishers, because the higher you go, the less chance you will get in with the survey based data because of so many issues we have in the past. And then when it comes to the discussion part, and that is where most of the times researchers actually make this mistake, that they cannot differentiate between results and discussion, because what you have in results section are the description of the study findings, but then you need to have a discussion section which will give us an idea that how is your study similar or different to the previous studies that has happened in the same area or same type. How is it advancing the theoretical foundation? Do you contradict the theoretical justification? For example, if we say that a very common similar simple theory is agency theory, where we know that the agency theory says that you will have a tension between managers and shareholders, and that's why you need, if you leave the managers alone, they will be uh, self-motivated, and to cater for this type of issues you need to have higher internal control. So that's why we have a lots of different types of governance uh, mechanisms. So what we expect that the higher or the better the governance of a firm, the better will be the performance of this company. That is a general theoretical understanding. Now, if your study says something different, why? You need to give more explanation. That is where you go and explain all these things in details. However, in the results section, you just talk about what has happened. Okay, what have you found? A general description of all these things. So it's very, very important that you have this distinction. You have a results section and also a discussion section. Finally, because after you have done all this, I think when everybody reaches to this conclusion, everybody is so happy that they are very close to the end. So you just want to finish your this like conclusion and end your research. However, don't uh, just throw away your conclusion section, because this is important. You need to highlight at least what was your objective, what did you find, how does it contribute, and does it have whatever findings, major findings that you identify, does it have any practical implication in terms of, does it make any policy implication for the regulators? Does it have any implication for the managers, any uh, industry practitioners, academics? So who is going to use these findings and how? If you don't do it, then at the end of the day, it becomes very difficult to see why should anybody pay attention to the findings that you are trying to present. So just to keep in mind, the conclusion and introduction are two key areas. Sometimes people look first. So be careful that you don't neglect and pay a bit of attention in both of them. So here I just highlight, as I was talking a bit about examining or highlighting a research problem. So in this study, if you see, I highlighted that they explain why they need to study the financial literacy in the digital age. what is their research agenda? So they just try to say that there has been studies, but that focused on something that has not been looked at. So they identified something that needs to be examined, and we don't have much in that area. However, the study that these authors propose will look into it, and this is how that will contribute. So it's clear, simple, easy to understand, and grabs your attention. You want to know what they find, how did they do it, and what implications they might have. So just a simple example. Now, if you are focusing on, for example, we will have a look at both areas, but the example that I have in front of you is just to give you an idea about the type of data source that you might need to have access, and what people actually use in terms of the secondary data sources to develop a paper. So if you can see on the third column, you see the sources. So uh, and you can see there are multiple sources this paper have tried to access the data from. However, there is also a mixture of their own calculation. So I can also share with you. Let me share here. Uh, this is the website. I have also put it in the slides. And this library has already provided you the type of databases that you can use to get the secondary data. For example, if you're interested in economics, this is where you can go. All these databases that you might have access. Finance research, these are all the databases that are relevant for you. Some of them are open access, some of them you might need to have access. So check with your library to see how you can access those information. Okay, now let's have a quick look at how does a primary data-based study looks like. So I will again go back to my website over here. So this is the study I'm looking at. So you can see the topic itself is the impact of behavioral factors on acquisition performance, mediating role of speed of post-acquisition change. So what they are trying to do, the purpose of this paper is to increase understanding of the influence of behavioral factors. So sometimes these behaviors that you are trying to explore, these are personal behavior, and you will not be able to get it from database. You need to actually talk with people. And that is the reason why when you look at the method, they used questionnaire. Uh, they used 208 valid questionnaires. So then they actually sent this survey to many people, but only 208 from 10 acquired companies. So that is or about companies that has been acquired, and they sent questionnaire to these 208 people and they got the results. So if you look at the analysis, and you will see these are the types of information you will always see when you are doing a primary based information. So they will have to give us the demographic situation, the gender, age group, education level. These are some very basic, their position in the organization, all these things. So this gives us an idea that majority of the survey respondents were female. They are between 26 to 45. Then they have at least secondary education, and then we have like 45% are managerial position. So once you know the demography of this survey instruments, and next you have to do this analysis. We call it principal component analysis, that is related with the components of your questionnaire to see whether you can these are all relevance with the reliability and validity. So these are all, again, next you will see the metrics to classify the four components and what are the type of question and what they relate to, what are the broad areas. So because you need to do all these things to ensure reliability of your findings. Then the descriptive statistics of your study variables. So you see, these are the variables that they are trying to explore, the mean, standard deviation, and these are the correlation. So we need to check if there is a high correlation. That can be an issue. Anything 70 and above, that can have an issue. I believe you have already looked to it. Then you have the regression. So the regression is a very common type of quantitative method. This is a very simple regression where you have an independent variable having an impact on the dependent variable and so on. Let's go ahead. So these are again some additional regression analysis. So and that's what you will see. Uh, so this is finally a conceptual framework where they are trying to see how the corporate cultural difference has an impact on acquisition performance and whether the speed of post-acquisition change enhance or decreases this performance, and does it vary based on the type of acquisition. So all these things, they have done this test and they have identified this. So this is just an idea what a primary data structure can do. Then we have a look at how to deal with a secondary data-based survey. Okay, so this study, this is published in one of the top journals in finance. If you are familiar, this is Journal of Corporate Finance, and they look at trade shocks and investment efficiency. So how shocks have an impact on investment efficiency. And if you look closely, because of the nature of this study, they are more quantitative, and they have developed this equation where you have the performance, TDI is related with trade shocks or something, and this is the investment efficiency. So now when you have this equation, you need to utilize certain type of database to get the data that you need to examine. And you can see here the issue that they discuss are not something local, or that is more a global type of issue that they want to examine. And that's why when you look at the statistics, it looks different because they are going to cover several years starting from 2003 until 2016. So why? Because the study was published in 2025, so perhaps they have certain justification why they have stopped in 2016. But then you have number of firms, then all these different statistics are all here. The descriptive statistics of all the variables, as I mentioned, that if you are using secondary data, that type of studies will have variables, and the variables are more normally three types. If we go here, it gives you a more easier idea. So this is the main variable, the Tobin's Q, TDI, and these three are the main variable of interest. These are independent variable. Investment is the dependent variable, and then you have the control variables are here. So what is a control variable? Just very short, is these are the variables that are not really what you want to examine, but they need to be there so that you can say that after controlling for external issues and internal issues, I can still be confident that the impact on this on the investment is significant. So that is what you need to ensure when you are designing a secondary database study. You need to ensure that you have three sets of variables. One is dependent, one is independent, and you have set of control variables which are very common for the companies. These are industry specific or firm specific variables. For example, how big is the company, how old is the company, their capital structure, how profitable are the company. So by controlling all of these issues, I can still be confident that the impact of Tobin's Q on investment is going to be remaining significant and positive, and that is one thing. Then you need to do so many additional tests to ensure that the results you show here are valid and consistent and reliable. So that is one of the challenge in the secondary database survey results or study, because in a secondary data you need to consistently prove that the variables that you use and the results that you generated are reliable. This is not like because of luck you ended up getting these results that you have. uh, can you confirm that by changing certain aspect you will keep on getting the same and consistent results? And that's what you have to prove again and again using same or similar use or different aspect. You are trying to prove the same issue again and again using different empirical techniques, or just changing different contexts, introducing different elements. For example, here, if you are changing the managerial slack, if you change to sales to assets, like high free cash flow, low free cash flow, by changing different aspect, can you still maintain the same results? That will be the main challenge. And if you cannot, then it will cause a lot of consequences, because then people will lose confidence in your results, in your ability to generate significant and consistent results. So that's one thing you have to be careful when you are designing a secondary database survey, a secondary database study, because your job is to be ensuring that the results you have are not based on luck, but it is based on theory, clear conceptual framework, and consistent, valid results after you change so many things, but still you keep on getting the same results. So we are now at the end, and I will just finish today's discussion by highlighting, and we will need a whole different session if we go into this issue, but this is more relevant to secondary, but you might face issues in primary research design also. That is endogeneity. That is very serious issue. And if you are doing a study which uses database and secondary data, and you have a specific empirical model that you want to test, you need to explain how have you dealt with endogeneity. And this endogeneity is, in a very simple term, is biasness that can affect your study findings. As you can see, uh, the last line, what I try to say is what makes endogeneity particularly e- a, like a problem, because there can be bias which can result from misspecification, omitting variable, or errors in your estimation, and sometimes you cannot control. For example, if you decide you want to study something and you have decided, okay, this will be my variable, how can you confirm that you have included all variables that you need to study? It's very difficult, and that is where somebody can question that you may have omitted certain variable that might have a different impact between independent and dependent, and it's difficult to prove. So you need to have a section where you talk about what can be the possible sources of endogeneity and how have you dealt with, because there are so many different methods. One of them is, for example, 2SLS is one method, GMM is there. In the study that I just shared, they use placebo method. You can use instrumental variable, you can use match sampling, you can use lag models, so many different ways you can handle. So there are cure, but you need to find what is the problem, then you can apply that cure. Okay, I think I have talked enough, and it was really fun going through these issues with you. I hope I tried to summarize and give you an idea the things that you might expect and you should think about when designing your study going forward. I hope that you have a wonderful dissertation, or you continue to get interested to convert your studies into a publication. And by going through all these issues, keeping this mind and dealing with these issues, I believe will help you to navigate this journey a bit smoother, because I understand the challenges that comes with writing a dissertation or writing a paper. But keep in mind, research problems needs to be significant, unique, and that will guide your research method. Um, that's it for today. I hope that you have enjoyed this discussion, and I hope you'll find some of this useful. And I wish you all the best. Have a nice day. Bye.